His upper jawbone was massive, a long, curved bone with 9 tiny holes meant to hold his teeth. The remainder of his skeleton was blackened by a fairly large fire ignited by an anonymous killer. Lifting up the jawbone, I examined the small blades of grass that adhered to its exterior, organic evidence from his hillside grave in El Cerrito in Northern California. It was distressing to hold a bone that had belonged to a murder victim, particularly one who was never identified. I glanced over at the archivist, Laura Michaels, who quietly stood across the wooden desk inside the massive warehouse. "What's next?" I asked. She led me down a long row of large cartons, more than 100 boxes donated by the same owner. I had been given exclusive access to a trove of material collected over 5 decades by a brilliant man, a forensic scientist and criminalist from the first half of the 20th century, a man who changed how crimes were solved before forensics became the foundation of most criminal cases, America's Sherlock Holmes. I walked along the tight corridor, scanning the labels on the cardboard boxes for a common name: Edward Oscar Heinrich. When Heinrich died in 1953, at the age of 72, his youngest child, Mortimer, waited 16 years to donate the contents of his father's laboratory, a bastion of forensic history that once monopolized the ground floor of Mortimer's childhood home in Berkeley, California. In 1968, he bequeathed his father's many boxes containing case files, evidence, personal diaries, letters, even romantic poetry to the University of California at Berkeley, Oscar's alma mater and the college where he spent years teaching forensic science. The archive was an incredible repository of information, but given the university's limited budget for archival material and research, the collection remained uncatalogued and untouched for more than 50 years. In 2016, I discovered Oscar Heinrich hidden in a short article that lauded one of his most famous cases, the Siskiyou train robbery of 1923. Astonished that no contemporary author had penned a book about him, I requested that UC Berkeley open his collection for research. Michaels agreed, and after more than a year of waiting, I began to immerse myself in the bizarre world of Oscar Heinrich, the most famous criminalist you've likely never heard of. The boxes contain more than 100,000 pieces of information, such as photographs, notes, letters, sketches, and trial transcripts. It was an overwhelming and disorganized collection that was housed in the school's off-site processing center. Heinrich seemingly kept everything from his life, personal and professional, maniacally collecting notes written on napkins, thousands of newspapers, hundreds of bullets, and dozens of financial journals. I began jokingly describing him as a productive hoarder, until my colleague, a psychology professor at the University of Texas, suggested that he had, in fact, fit the diagnostic criteria for obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, which occurs in just 1% of the population. People with OCPD have a preoccupation with perfectionism, control, and order, a neat life. They are frequently extremely productive and successful. But their personal relationships often suffer because their rigidity can manifest itself in righteousness, even anger when their control is threatened. Heinrich's already stressful life was certainly complicated by his OCPD, but as an author and researcher, I was thankful for his fastidious habit of adding constantly to his collection. I was particularly grateful for the numerous boxes of evidence he had preserved from criminal cases. The evidence was plentiful, spanning investigations that unraveled over decades. The archivist allowed me to examine pieces from a detonated bomb, a locket owned by a dead woman who was run down by her own car, a lock of hair belonging to an actress who died during an infamous party, and several pistols that required having their firing pins removed by UC Berkeley police.